Hey guys! So, before I start the topic that I actually wanted to talk about today, I just wanted to thank Hannah Witton and all the people that she sent over for just coming here and just sharing this little space on the internet with me, because it was completely unexpected and it was really kind of her. And I think my favourite thing about the video was the fact that it was so diverse, and I also know a lot of these people, and it just made me really happy to be able to see other people being celebrated as well. So that was really cool. So today what I actually wanted to explore was why we actually value famous people's opinion / words / interactions over people who are perhaps more like ourselves, because I just found this really interesting. And when I originally was thinking about this video, it was just after Hannah had subscribed to me, so not even after the video, just thinking about why someone of that size was subscribed to me, who until yesterday morning had only 70 odd subscribers. And I think it was just really interesting to think about the fact that famous people, I think, the reason why, or people who are better in their trade, maybe not famous, but people who are better, the reason why we value their opinion so much is because quite often it's either because there's so many layers between us and them that they've overcome to be able to come and value our work, that it feels like even though they may say the same thing as someone who's much more like us, it feels like it's worth more because they've made such an effort to say it, if that makes sense. But at the same time, I think it's really interesting to think about how someone who's famous or better well known for their work, and someone who is more like ourselves, they could say the same thing, they could give you exactly the same feedback, but somehow the person who is more well known will perhaps leave a bigger impression on you, and perhaps you'll listen to them more because of their status. Now, I just think it's obviously this completely depends on the circumstance and who you're actually talking about. But I think the thing that I also found really interesting is to think about how both people may actually come from a position where they do actually have quite a bit of knowledge and experience, because there's the other reason why we might value someone who's more well known is because they might have a bigger amount of experience or work or projects that they can compare to, and therefore even though they may say the same thing, for example, this is really good, it may feel like it's worth more because of the fact they've just come across so much, and therefore it feels like if they've got so much more to compare to, then the same comment must mean so much more. And that compared to someone who's much more like yourself, you may actually think that they have less experience, and therefore them saying that your work is good, or anything is good, may not feel as valid in comparison, which I find quite interesting, because I think the thing that I love to come back to is the fact that obviously everyone will say things from a completely different mashup of experiences. None of us have exactly the same experiences. Even if we're born in the same household and brought up the same way, we'll have different experiences. Obviously there's different varying degrees of how different they are, but they are different. And I think the really interesting to think about is how someone who you might consider more like yourself may actually have a great wealth of experience that they're drawing upon. They're just not well known for it, and therefore assuming that someone who's speaking to you on a peer-to-peer level doesn't have more the same value to share with you is a mistake, I think. And I think it's just really interesting to be able to see why we do value people who are more well known and their interactions as much as not necessarily the same as people who we consider peers. I think a really interesting point that also came out in the comments that came in yesterday was one talking about why we necessarily value interaction more. I think the really cool thing that I found is the same sort of idea, the fact that we should value what the interaction is actually giving to us rather than who it's coming from. So for example, if someone who we admire, for example, replies to us but doesn't necessarily say very much, we might feel more in awe of that compared to if someone of our own level says that to us. And I just found that really interesting, because obviously you still have the same points as before with the layers, but it's just really interesting to think about how it's always important to consider the value of what you're saying, and not just saying something for the sake of saying something. Though I do think it's really important, I think when there's so many layers between you and the person, their acknowledgement of your point can be, very important, because obviously they have read through so much more and they've decided to come to you, and I think that's really cool. So yeah, I think there's a lot of factors at play as to why we consider interaction and criticism, not constructive criticism, from people who are better well known more than people who we may consider peers, even though they may be different or the same, and therefore what value we give to them. So, as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful time doing what you're doing, and I will see you next time. Bye guys.